The colony ship Meridian descended through Velothus's crimson atmosphere in flames. Captain Eleanor gripped the controls as alarms shrieked through the dying vessel. Behind her, Dr. Adrian cradled an infant, the last surviving child from the cryopods. "We won't make it," Eleanor whispered. The ship crashed into Obsidian Mountains with a thunderous roar. Of the 200 colonists, only 17 survived. Eleanor and Adrian emerged from the wreckage to find themselves surrounded by shadows. Golden eyes, each the size of a shield, fixed upon them from the darkness. Dragons. Dozens of them. The smoke cleared slowly and Eleanor's heart stopped. She had never seen anything so massive, so terrifying, so alive with ancient power. The dragons circled the wreckage like hunters who had found their prey. Their scales shimmered in the red sunlight, each one a different color, some deep purple, some silver like mirrors, some black as midnight. Their wings stretched wide enough to block out the sun itself. Dr. Adrian stepped closer to Eleanor, holding the baby even tighter. The child, a boy named Kale, slept peacefully in his arms, unaware of the danger surrounding them. Adrian's hands shook as he looked at the wall of dragon faces staring down at them. He had studied many alien species in his career as a scientist, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "What do we do?" Adrian asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor did not answer immediately. She was thinking. Her mind raced through options, none of them good. They could run, but there was nowhere to go. The mountains surrounded them. They could fight, but 17 humans against dragons was not a fight at all. It was suicide. She could see no escape, no survival, no hope. Then the largest dragon descended from above. This dragon was different from the others. Its scales were not just one color but a mixture of midnight black and silver that seemed to shift and flow like water. Its eyes were a deep gold, intelligent and ancient. On its head sat what looked like a natural crown made of its own bones and scales. This was clearly their leader. The dragon's voice was like thunder rolling across the mountains. It was not cruel or angry, but it was powerful and deep, and it made the ground tremble beneath their feet. "You trespass on our world," the dragon said. "Your metal bird falls from the sky and crashes upon our sacred mountains. Why should we not destroy you where you stand?" Eleanor forced herself to stand tall, even though every part of her wanted to run or hide. She was the captain, and these people needed her to be brave. She stepped forward, placing herself between the dragon and Dr. Adrian and the baby. "We mean no harm," Eleanor said, her voice steady even though she was terrified. "Our ship was damaged. We could not control where we fell. We ask only for mercy." The dragon's head moved closer to Eleanor. She could feel the heat radiating from its body. The smell of smoke and ancient fire surrounded her. She closed her eyes for just a moment, preparing herself for the end. But the dragon did not attack. Instead, it studied her with those ancient golden eyes. Eleanor opened her own eyes again and met the dragon's gaze. For a long moment, neither moved. It felt like the dragon was looking not just at her, but into her, seeing who she was and what she wanted. "What do you have to offer us?" the dragon asked. "Why should we allow your kind to live?" Eleanor's mind worked quickly. She knew that in many cultures, throughout human history, tribute was offered to powerful leaders. Perhaps these dragons understood the same concept. Perhaps there was a way to negotiate, to trade something valuable for their survival. She turned to Dr. Adrian. He looked at her with confusion and fear in his eyes. Eleanor gave him a small nod, and Adrian understood what she was thinking. He stepped forward, still holding the baby. "We offer tribute," Eleanor said to the great dragon. "We offer a prince of our kind. This is the last child born on our ship. He is pure. He is innocent. He is the future of our people. We ask that you care for him, raise him as your own, and in exchange we ask only for passage to rebuild elsewhere on your world. Allow us to live in peace, and this child will be a symbol of the bond between our two kinds." The dragon was silent for a very long time. Eleanor could see its massive chest rising and falling as it breathed. She could see the other dragons watching, waiting to see what their leader would do. Then, slowly, the great dragon lowered its massive head. Its golden eyes fixed on the sleeping baby in Dr. Adrian's arms. Something changed in those eyes. They became softer, almost gentle, though still powerful and ancient. "His name?" the dragon asked. "Kale," Adrian answered, his voice shaking. "His name is Kale." The dragon extended a single claw, a talon as long as a human arm. Dr. Adrian hesitated for just a moment, then gently placed the sleeping infant on the dragon's open claw. Kale did not wake. He simply shifted slightly, still sleeping, his small human body completely vulnerable in the grasp of this enormous creature. The dragon drew the child close to its great-scaled chest. A low sound came from deep within the dragon's body, a sound like thunder but also like the purring of a cat, but thousands of times louder and deeper. It was a sound of contentment, of acceptance, of something like love. "He shall be my son," the dragon declared, its voice carrying across the mountains so that all the other dragons could hear. "A prince of dragons. A child of both our kinds. From this moment forward, he will be known as Kale of Drakthor, Prince of the Mountain Realm, under my protection and my love." Eleanor felt tears streaming down her face. She had just given away a child, but she had also saved his life and the lives of her people. She did not know if this was the right choice, but it was the only choice she had. The great dragon rose into the air, Kale cradled safely against its scaled chest. The baby opened his eyes for just a moment, but he did not cry. He simply looked up at the dragon's face with curiosity and wonder, as if he somehow understood that he was exactly where he needed to be. The dragon flew toward the mountains, disappearing into the mist, and Eleanor watched the only child she had saved from the crash disappear into an unknown future. Kale grew in the great halls of Drakthor, Queen Silaratha's fortress. By age 10 he stood barely to the shoulders of his smallest siblings. His skin was pale and soft where theirs gleamed with scales. His fingers had only 5 extensions where theirs had claws. Yet the queen loved him fiercely. "He is sharp where we are strong," she would say when the noble dragon sneered at his presence. Kale's eldest brother Vex despised him most. "A human in the line of succession? This weakens us," Vex would snarl. The fortress of Drakthor was a place of stone and fire, carved deep into the heart of the mountains themselves. Towers rose like teeth toward the red sky. Waterfalls of molten rock flowed down the inner walls, kept safely contained by ancient magic. The halls were so vast that a human would need days to walk from one end to the other. Kale had lived here his entire life, but he still felt small every single day. Queen Silarath had raised him as her own son. She gave him the best rooms in the palace. She hired tutors to teach him dragon language, dragon history, and dragon customs. She attended his training sessions personally, watching with pride as he learned to ride and to fight, even though his body was so different from his siblings. But the other dragons did not accept him easily. In the throne room, nobles would lower their eyes when Kale entered. In the gardens, young dragons would stop playing and stare at him with suspicion. They whispered about him behind their claws. Some called him the soft one. Others called him the pale thing. The worst dragons called him an insult that made Queen Silaratha's eyes turn red with anger. When Kale was just 6 years old, a noble dragon named Lord Kess had spoken against him directly in front of the queen. Lord Kess was ancient and powerful, with scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "My queen," Lord Kess had said, his voice dripping with false respect, "surely you see that this human child cannot possibly lead our people. What strength does he possess? What dragon blood runs through his veins? He is not one of us. He can never be one of us. To place him in the line of succession is to invite weakness into our empire." The throne room had gone silent. Everyone waited to see how the queen would respond. Silarath had risen from her throne, and her anger was like a storm. "He is my son," she had said, her voice so loud that the stone walls trembled. "And you will show him respect or you will leave my kingdom forever. Is that understood, Lord Kess?" Lord Kess had bowed quickly and left the room. But Kale had seen the hatred in the old dragon's eyes. He knew that he had made an enemy that day. Kale's eldest brother, Vex, was different. Vex did not hate Kale at first. Instead, Vex simply did not see him as a true brother. Vex was large and strong, with scales the color of storm clouds. He was everything a dragon prince should be. He flew faster than the other young dragons. He was stronger. He was more intelligent. Vex had always assumed that he would be the next leader of the dragon people. But then Queen Silarath began to speak of succession in a different way. She did not say that Vex would be the next ruler. She said that all of her children would be trained, and that when the time came, the wisest and strongest would be chosen, not by blood alone, but by character and ability. This made Vex's eyes narrow with rage. "Father is weak," Vex had told his younger siblings one day in the cave where they slept. "She loves that human child more than she loves us. We are pure dragons. We have dragon blood. Yet she raises him as if he is better than us. This is not right. This is not natural." Kale had heard these words. He was hiding behind a stone, practicing the art of stealth that one of his tutors had taught him. He heard his brother's angry voice and he felt sadness in his heart. He had never asked for any of this. He had never asked to be different. He had never asked to be loved by the queen while his own brother hated him. But Kale did not cry. Instead, he continued to train harder. He studied longer. He practiced his languages until he could speak dragon as well as any native speaker. He learned the history of the dragon people, studying ancient texts that had been written thousands of years ago. He learned about their wars, their triumphs, their failures, and their great heroes. Other dragons began to notice. A dragon named Lyra, who was similar in age to Kale, started to respect him. Lyra was a smaller dragon, not as strong as Vex, but quick and clever. She and Kale became friends, training together and exploring the vast halls of Drakthor. "Why do you try so hard?" Lyra had asked him one day. "Vex will always hate you. The nobles will always doubt you. You cannot change what you are." Kale had looked at his friend with serious eyes. "I know I cannot change what I am," he had said. "But I can change what I become. The queen saved my life. She gave me everything. I will not waste that gift by feeling sorry for myself." Lyra had been quiet for a moment. Then she had smiled, a fierce dragon smile that showed her teeth. "Then I will help you become the greatest prince this kingdom has ever known," she had said. Years passed. Kale grew taller, though he would never be as large as a dragon. His muscles became strong and lean. His mind grew sharper. He learned to ride the wind currents better than dragons twice his size. He learned to read an opponent's movements and predict their next attack. He learned to speak with wisdom and to listen carefully to others. By the time Kale was 10 years old, something strange had happened. The young dragons no longer mocked him. They had begun to respect him. Some even came to him for advice. But Vex's hatred had only grown stronger. One day, Vex confronted Kale in one of the palace training grounds. Vex's wings were spread wide, and his eyes burned with jealous rage. "You will never be a true dragon," Vex had said, his claws scraping against the stone floor. "One day everyone will see the truth. And when they do, you will have nowhere to hide." Kale had looked at his brother calmly. "I do not ask to be a dragon," Kale had replied. "I ask only to be worthy of the mother who chose to love me." Vex had roared so loudly that the entire palace shook. But he did not attack. Instead, he turned and flew away, leaving Kale standing alone in the training ground. Queen Silarath had been watching from above the entire time. She had seen her sons face each other, and she had seen Kale choose wisdom over anger. She had descended slowly and placed her great head against her human son's shoulder. "You will face many more tests than this," she had whispered. "But I believe in you, my son. Never forget that." On Kale's 18th year, the Dragon Council convened. The eldest noble, Lord Mace, rose to speak. "The human must prove his right to remain in succession. He shall undergo the trial of fire. He must enter the volcano of Ashen Moor and retrieve the eternal flame." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Dragons had died in that trial. Silarath rose, fury blazing. "This is..." "The law is the law," Lord Mace interrupted coldly. Kale stepped forward. "I accept." The great council chamber of Drakthor was a circular room carved from solid black stone. The walls rose so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadow. Along the walls sat the most powerful dragons in the entire kingdom, each one old and wise and dangerous. Their eyes gleamed like jewels in the torchlight. The floor beneath their feet was inscribed with ancient symbols that glowed faintly with old magic. Queen Silarath sat on her throne at the head of the chamber. Kale stood before her, dressed in simple black clothes that were more practical than formal. He was 18 years old now, no longer a child but not yet fully grown into manhood. His body was lean and strong from years of training. His face was calm and focused. Lord Mace was the oldest dragon in the council. His scales were so ancient and weathered that they looked like ancient stone. He had been a general in wars that happened hundreds of years ago. His voice carried the weight of endless wisdom and endless coldness. "The human has lived among us for 18 years, Lord Mace said, his eyes fixed on Kale. "The queen has raised him as her son. But blood is blood, and a human cannot truly be a dragon. The law states that anyone who wishes to be in the line of succession must prove themselves through the trial of fire. The human must prove that he has the strength and the wisdom to rule us. He must enter the volcano of Ashen Moor and retrieve the eternal flame." The chamber erupted in noise. Dragons argued with each other. Some dragons nodded in agreement with Lord Mace. Others shook their heads in disagreement. Kale's friend Lyra stood up, her voice rising above the others. "This is unfair," Lyra shouted. "Humans are not fire creatures. This trial is designed for dragons, not for soft-skinned beings." Lord Mace turned his ancient gaze on Lyra. "The law does not change because it is difficult. The law is the law. If the human wishes to be in the line of succession, he must prove himself. If he fails, then we will know that he was never meant to lead us. Queen Silarath rose from her throne. Her entire body shimmered with barely controlled anger. The air around her seemed to get hotter. Flames flickered from her nostrils as she breathed. "This is a trick," the queen said, her voice like an earthquake. "You seek to use this trial to murder my son. I will not allow it." "My queen," Lord Mace said, bowing his head in false respect, "the law has been in place for 1,000 years. We cannot simply abandon it because it is inconvenient. If you protect the human from this trial, then you admit that he is not worthy. You admit that he cannot stand with us as an equal. Is that what you wish to show the kingdom?" The chamber fell silent. Everyone waited to see what the queen would say. Kale could see the conflict in his mother's eyes. She wanted to protect him. He could feel her love and her fear. But she was also a leader, and leaders had to follow the law. Kale stepped forward before the queen could speak. His voice was clear and strong. "I accept the trial," Kale said. Everyone turned to look at him. Queen Silaratha's eyes widened in shock. "Kale, no," she said. "I accept," Kale repeated. He walked toward Lord Mace and looked the ancient dragon directly in his old eyes. "If this is the law, then I will follow it. I will enter the volcano of Ashenmoor. I will retrieve the eternal flame. And I will prove that I am worthy to be in the line of succession." Lord Mace smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who believed they had already won. The next morning, Kale stood at the base of the volcano of Ashenmoor. The volcano was massive, a mountain of black stone that rose so high that its peak disappeared into clouds. Smoke poured from its crater. The ground beneath Kale's feet was warm. In some places, it was so hot that his shoes began to wear away. The Dragon Council had gathered on the surrounding hills to watch. They expected to watch Kale die. They had brought wine and prepared to celebrate his death. Vex stood among them, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Lord Mace was there too, his ancient face confident that the law would claim another victim. But Kale did not rush into the volcano like a fool. Instead, he sat down on a cool stone and simply watched. He observed the volcano for 2 hours, studying the patterns of heat, the movement of air currents, the way the smoke flowed. He noticed that the heat was not constant. There were moments when the temperature dropped slightly. There were pathways where the hot air moved in predictable patterns. Kale understood something that the dragons did not. Strength was not just about being large or powerful. Strength was also about being smart. He pulled out a water skin and soaked strips of cloth in water. He tied the wet cloth around his face and arms. He found a shield made of stone and carried it with him. Then, when he had studied the volcano long enough, he began to move. Kale did not try to go straight up the volcano. Instead, he followed the cooler pathways. When the heat became too intense, he waited in small caves until the temperature shifted. When flames erupted from cracks in the stone, he moved to the side, using his smaller size to fit into spaces where a dragon could never fit. The dragons watching from above began to understand what was happening. This was not a test of pure strength. This was a test of intelligence and observation and patience. Kale was using his human mind to survive where a dragon's strength would only lead to death. After 2 hours of climbing and moving carefully through the volcano, Kale reached the inner chamber. In the center of the chamber, a flame burned that had never been extinguished for 10,000 years. It was the eternal flame, burning in a crystalline container that protected it from the heat of the volcano. Kale carefully approached the flame. He had prepared for this moment. He used his last wet cloth to protect his hands, and he lifted the crystalline container. The heat was intense, but his preparation had worked. He was not burned. Kale turned and began to descend the volcano. When he finally emerged at the base of the volcano, he was bleeding from small cuts and burns, but he was alive. In his hands he held the eternal flame, glowing and burning safely within its crystalline container. The dragons on the hills went silent. They had not expected this. They had not believed it was possible. Lord Mace's old face turned dark with anger. Vex's expression changed from anticipation to shock. But Queen Silarath descended from the sky, tears streaming from her eyes, and wrapped her great wings around her son. "By the ancient law," the council announced, their voices forced but formal, "Kale has completed the trial of fire. He is a true prince of Velothus. His right to the succession cannot be questioned again." Kale looked at his mother's proud face, and he knew that everything was about to change. Part 4, War and Betrayal. 3 years passed in relative peace. Kale had become a respected commander, beloved by many, feared by others. Then Lord Mace made his move. He conspired with the northern houses, promising them wealth and power if they would place Vex on the throne instead. Vex, ambitious and bitter about sharing power with a human, agreed. One night, dragons attacked the royal palace. Silarath was struck down defending her throne. "Mother!" Kale cried, cradling her in his arms as her blood pooled beneath her. "Fight," she whispered. "Rule. Show them what you truly are." Kale rose, rage and purpose crystallizing within him. He organized the loyal forces with brilliant tactics, using the palace's narrow corridors against the larger dragons, positioning archers on high ground, cutting off supply lines with surgical precision. When Vex confronted him in the throne hall, Kale spoke clearly, "I never wanted this war, brother. But I will not let our mother's sacrifice be forgotten." Vex hesitated. In that hesitation he saw the truth. Kale had never resented him. Kale had always seen him as family. Vex yielded. Lord Mace and the rebellious houses were defeated within days. The 3 years after Kale had passed the trial of fire were the most peaceful years that Velothus had known in a long time. Kale had earned the respect of most of the kingdom. He had trained with the armies. He had helped settle disputes between different regions. He had become a commander that soldiers trusted and followed. Even the dragons who had once doubted him had begun to see that he was wise and strong in his own way. Queen Silarath had watched her son with pride. She had seen him grow from a small, lonely human child into a leader who could unite dragons and inspire loyalty. She had begun to think that maybe, just maybe, Kale could be the greatest ruler that Velothus had ever known. But not everyone was happy about this. Lord Mace watched from his stronghold in the eastern mountains. His ancient eyes burned with hatred and jealousy. He had ruled with the queen for hundreds of years, and he had believed that one of the pure dragon princes would take the throne after her. He had not believed that a human could ever truly be worthy. And now it seemed like that human might actually become the next ruler of the kingdom. One night, Lord Mace sent secret messages to the northern houses. The northern houses were powerful dragon clans who lived in the frozen mountains far away from Drakthor. They were ambitious and hungry for power. Lord Mace promised them wealth beyond measure. He promised them territory and slaves and resources. He told them that if they helped him place Vex on the throne instead of Kale, they would be rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. At first, the northern houses hesitated. But Lord Mace was very persuasive. He sent them treasures and jewels. He sent them maps of Kale's defense plans. He sent them promises written in ancient dragon script. Eventually, the northern houses agreed. Lord Mace also went to Vex. Vex had spent 3 years watching Kale become stronger and more respected. Vex had begun to believe that he would never be the ruler of Velothus. His younger brother, the human, had taken everything from him. Vex's heart had grown bitter and dark with jealousy. When Lord Mace came to him and offered him the throne, Vex agreed immediately. "I will help you," Vex said to Lord Mace. "I will tell you where the guards will be. I will tell you the weaknesses of the palace. Together, we will take back what should always have been mine." On a night when the red moon was hidden by clouds, the attack came. Dragons poured out of the sky like a storm of death. They descended on Drakthor with fire and fury. The loyal guards of Queen Silarath tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and unprepared. Soldiers screamed and died in the courtyard. The great hall was set on fire. Queen Silarath emerged from her throne room, her scales gleaming in the firelight. She was old now, but she was still a warrior. She had fought in wars hundreds of years ago and she knew how to fight. The queen confronted Lord Mace and the rebel dragons in the main courtyard of the palace. She fought with the strength and fury of someone who refused to let her kingdom fall. But she was old and there were too many enemies. A young rebel dragon struck her from behind. A warrior from the northern houses knocked her to the ground. Kale was in the southern tower when the attack began. He heard the screams and the fire and the roar of battle. He ran toward the throne room, his sword in his hand, his mind already calculating what needed to be done. He saw his mother fall. He saw her blood stain the ancient stone floor of the palace. He ran to her, dropping to his knees, cradling her head in his lap. "Mother, no. No, stay with me," Kale begged, his voice breaking. Queen Silarath's eyes were still bright with intelligence and love, even though her body was failing. She looked up at her son, and a small smile crossed her ancient face. "Fight," she whispered. "Rule. Show them what you truly are. Do not grieve for me, my son. Be the leader that Velothus needs." Then her eyes closed and she breathed no more. Kale held his mother's body just a moment. He felt the grief and the rage building inside him like a storm. But he pushed the grief aside. His mother had asked him to fight and he would honor that request. Kale rose to his feet and looked at the rebels surrounding him. He could see Vex among them, his eyes filled with shock and uncertainty. But Kale did not have time to deal with his brother right now. "Follow me," Kale shouted to the loyal guards who had survived. "We will not fall tonight." Kale was not as strong as the dragons, but he was smart. He knew the palace better than anyone alive. He led his forces through the narrow corridors and hidden passages that the rebels did not know about. He positioned archers on the high balconies where they could rain arrows down on the attackers. He cut off the rebels' supply lines so they could not bring in more warriors. The battle raged for hours. But slowly the loyal forces began to push back the rebels. The narrow corridors of the palace became the rebels' weakness. A dragon that was 3 times as large as a human could not move easily through a small hallway. Kale's forces used this advantage again and again. Finally, Vex confronted Kale in the Great Throne Hall. The two brothers stood facing each other, with blood and ashes all around them. "I am sorry it came to this," Kale said quietly. "You took everything from me," Vex said, his voice filled with pain and rage. "I never wanted to take anything from you," Kale replied. "I never wanted this. I only wanted to be worthy of Mother's love. I only wanted to be your brother. I have never hated you, Vex. Never." Vex stared at his human brother for a long moment. In that moment he saw the truth. Kale had never resented him. Kale had never tried to harm him or take power from him. Kale had only tried to be the best person he could be. And Kale had always seen Vex as family, as a brother. What happened between them? Vex dropped his weapon. "I yield," he said. "I yield to you, Prince Kale." Within days Lord Mace was defeated. The northern houses fled back to their frozen mountains, realizing that they could not win. The rebellion was broken. But the price had been terrible. Queen Silarath was dead. Many loyal soldiers had died. The palace was damaged. Kale stood in the great throne hall, surrounded by the ruins of war, and he wept for his mother. Silaratha's wounds were fatal. As her time approached, she summoned the council one final time. "I name my successor," she announced, her voice still commanding though growing faint. "Kale. The human who became dragon. The prince who chose love over vengeance. The leader who united us." Silence. Then slowly, one by one, the dragons bowed. Kale took the throne not as Dragon Queen, but as Dragon King, the first and only human to rule the ancient Draconic Empire. Years later, explorers from the reconstituted human colony arrived, searching for the lost child. They found him in the great hall of Drakthor, seated upon a throne of blackened obsidian, his small human frame dwarfed by the grandeur around him. Behind him stood dragons of every house, united under his rule. Kale smiled at his rediscovered people. "I am home," he said, "and I have never left." His reign became legend, the age when humanity and dragons learned that strength transcends species, and that a heart large enough could contain 2 worlds. Queen Silarath lived for 3 more days after the battle ended. She lay in her private chamber, surrounded by her children and her closest advisors. The healers said there was nothing they could do. Her injuries were too severe. Her ancient heart was failing. The queen had used the last of her strength to defend her throne and her kingdom. Kale sat beside his mother's bed the entire time. He held her claw in his hand, feeling the warmth slowly drain from her body as the hours passed. Lyra came and sat with him. Vex came too, and he wept silently for the mother he had tried to betray. On the 3rd night, Queen Silarath opened her eyes one final time. She looked at Kale, and her golden eyes were still bright with intelligence and love. "It is time," she said quietly. Kale shook his head. "Mother, please, do not leave me." "I am not leaving you," Silarath said. "I am passing my throne to you. I have decided. You will be the next ruler of Velothus." Kale's eyes filled with tears. "But the council will not accept me. I am human. They will say." "They will say nothing," the queen interrupted. Her voice was still powerful, even though her body was weak. "I am calling the council now. Before I die, I will make my announcement. And then you will rule as you were meant to rule." The Dragon Council assembled in the Great Hall of Drakthor. All the most powerful dragons in the kingdom came, including those who had supported Lord Mace and those who had remained loyal. They sat in a circle, their ancient eyes watching as Queen Silarath was carried into the hall on a great bed. The queen looked smaller now, her scales dulled by illness and age. But her voice, when she spoke, still carried the weight of 1,000 years. "I have called you here because my time is ending," Silarath announced. "Soon I will pass from this world. Before I do, I must name my successor. Someone must rule Velothus after I am gone. Someone must lead you into the future." The council members leaned forward, waiting to hear who the queen would choose. For many years I have watched my children grow, the queen continued. Some are strong. Some are wise. Some are ambitious. But only one has shown me the qualities that a true leader must possess. Vex straightened, his eyes hopeful. Only one has shown me courage not just in battle but in the face of prejudice and doubt. Only one has shown me that they care more about the kingdom than about themselves. Only one has proven that they can unite our people, not through force, but through respect and wisdom. The queen turned her eyes toward Kale. I name Kale as my successor. The human who became dragon. The prince who chose love over vengeance. The leader who united us. When I am gone, he will be your king. Silence filled the great hall. No one moved. No one spoke. Then, slowly, one of the oldest dragons, a female named Sarah who had ruled the western mountains, rose to her feet. She walked toward Kale and bowed her head, touching her forehead to the ground. It was a sign of the highest respect. One by one the other dragons followed. They came forward and bowed before Kale. Some moved quickly. Others moved slowly, their pride fighting against what they knew was right. But they all came and they all bowed. Vex was the last one to approach. He walked slowly toward his human brother, and for a moment, Kale could not tell what his brother would do. But then Vex bowed his great head and said, You are a better leader than I could ever be, brother. I accept you as my king. Queen Silaroth smiled. It was a smile of peace and satisfaction. She had done what she set out to do. She had ensured that her kingdom would be strong. She had ensured that her son would rule. That night, the queen died quietly in her sleep. The coronation of King Kale took place 1 week later. The ceremony was held in the great hall of Drakthor, the same place where his mother had ruled for centuries. Dragons from every corner of the kingdom came to witness it. They flew from distant mountains and sailed from faraway seas to see this impossible thing. A human being crowned as king of the dragons. Kale stood before them, wearing robes of black and silver, holding the ancient staff of the rulers of Velothus. He was small compared to the dragons, barely reaching the height of their legs. But when he spoke, his voice carried authority and wisdom. I know that many of you did not believe I could be your king, Kale said. I know that many of you thought I was too weak, too human, too different. And perhaps you were right to doubt. But I ask you now to look not at what I am, but at what I have done. I have fought for this kingdom. I have bled for this kingdom. I have lost my mother for this kingdom. I promise you that I will spend every day of my life making sure that all the people of Velothus, human and dragon alike, prosper and thrive together. The dragons roared in approval. The sound was like thunder rolling across the mountains. Years passed. King Kale proved to be a wise and just ruler. He made laws that protected both dragons and the few humans who lived on Velothus. He established trade routes with other kingdoms. He created schools where young dragons and humans could learn together. He ended the prejudice that had existed between the two species for centuries. One day, explorers from the human colony that had crashed so many years ago arrived at Drakthor. They had survived and rebuilt their civilization far from the dragons. Now they came seeking the child who had been given as tribute so long ago. They walked into the great hall of the palace and found a human man sitting on a throne of blackened obsidian. Around him stood dragons of every color and size, representing every house and region of the kingdom. The dragons bowed respectfully as the human explorers entered. King Kale rose from his throne and walked down the steps to greet his rediscovered people. His face was calm and kind, the face of someone who had found peace in two worlds. Welcome, Kale said. I am King Kale, ruler of Velothus. I believe you came searching for someone. But more importantly, I have been searching for you. Our two peoples have been separated for too long. It is time we came together again. It is time we learned that we are stronger when we stand as one. The human explorers stared at the young man who had once been their lost child. They saw in his eyes the wisdom of dragons and the compassion of humanity combined. I am home, Kale said, gesturing to the dragons around him. And I have never left. These are my family. This is my kingdom. And there is room for all of us here. And so began a new age in Velothus. An age when humans and dragons worked side by side. An age when a human king ruled with wisdom and justice. An age when two peoples learned that strength does not come from being the same, but from respecting what makes each other different. King Kale reigned for many years and his kingdom prospered. And though he lived in a palace of stone and fire, surrounded by creatures of ancient power and magic, he never forgot the small human child he had once been, the child that a dragon queen had chosen to love.